throughout the day. A very concerning situation is really unfolding in KwaZulu-Natal once again. And let's then take the story further. We speak now to Professor Tafadzwa Mabaudi, a climate change and food systems expert, as well as Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, Director of Gift of the Givers. Thank you so much to you both this afternoon. I'll begin with you, Dr. Sooliman. How's the situation on the ground in your view? Dr. Sooliman, I'm not sure if you're able to hear me.
I can hear you.
All right. What is the situation on the ground according to you? We just spoke to Minoshne now, who spoke about the community of La Mercy, but I do know that for you, you do have quite a bit of an advantage when it comes to what exactly is unfolding with the different teams that have been deployed.
The Clemency, uMdloti area, what Minoshne was talking about, is the most affected area right now. The central parts of Durban are okay. Most of the areas have been affected with water. It's mostly water and mud on the roads. Other than that, there hasn't been the damage of homes and businesses like the floods of earlier. And La Mercy has been badly hit. The roads have been cut off. The bridges have been cut off. They've been in a bad way. There's been some rescues inside, but not rescues, moving people to higher ground in La Mercy itself, to near the temple. And there were some rescues in uMdloti in a building that was sort of compromised. Other than that, there hasn't been much rescue or emergencies.
And before I move to Professor Mabaudi, I'd like to stay with you on that, that call for people to move to a higher ground. Are they heeding it, Dr. Sooliman? Because last night, the Premier telling SABC that some people are still reluctant to move to higher ground. Are they still reluctant even now?
Yes, people will never move to higher ground. It's to do what the possessions, it's the possessions that they have. It's mostly from informal settlements. People won't want to move away from there because their life possessions are in those informal settlements. Whether it's a fire, whether it's a flood, whether it's a disaster storm like what we see in last month and this month again, people will never move till the last minute. And it affects all communities. In Sandsfield, when I was there a few weeks ago, one of the gentlemen told me that within 45 minutes, the water rose 8 meters. And people, they were not moving out of there. And he said, fortunately, it was 5:30 in the afternoon. Had it been late at night, people would have been washed away. One of the problems is that people are not used to water levels rising this high. Yes, we had the floods of 2019. We have storms in other parts of the year, but we've never had anything to the extent that what we had on the 11th of April this year. So people are not expecting that kind of water rising. And now when you tell them again the water is going to rise, people, okay, they say they were more prepared than last time. But in spite of that, they're not going to move to higher ground.
Prof, let me bring you into this conversation. Last month when the floods hit, we heard even from the president talking about the impact that climate change was having on what we were seeing. Is that still the case even now as we're seeing the situation unfold? Because I remember on the ground, other people didn't agree, saying it was infrastructure and all of that. So what is behind what we are seeing now?
Okay, thanks. So for the last floods that we had in April, we can now confirm that indeed climate change made the rainfall more intense and more severe, and it worsened the effect of the event. So that we can confirm it was a climate change related event. And what we know for certain is that the frequency and intensity of weather extremes is likely to increase due to climate change. And of course, we are seeing these floods that are happening again this weekend. And whilst the impact has not been at the scale of what we saw in April, the concern is mostly around the issue that we have a lot of people that are still highly vulnerable. A lot of people were affected in the first floods. The repair work has not really taken off. And, for example, a lot of slopes that were unstable, that were left on the margins of landslides last time. So the risk profile is what has really escalated this situation, hence the level 10 warning issued by the South African Weather Service.
And let's talk more about that risk profile, because some people are still not aware as to what makes KwaZulu-Natal so prone to these conditions that we've seen. I mean, when it comes to flooding, because it does fit that risk profile that you've just spoken about.
Yes, so naturally, KwaZulu-Natal has the highest flood risk profile in South Africa of the other provinces. And that is mostly to do with its geography and topography, where it is positioned. The landslides are also a natural risk due to the geology of the province, that we've got a lot of steep slopes that were formed from sand, and naturally they are unstable. Whilst we know there are regulations not to build or erect structures on those, the implementation or regulation has not been very strict. And also the historical issues of people being, resettled, and a lot of people living within these unsafe areas with poorly erected structures. So it's a whole host of issues. There's the biophysical issues, which categorize the risk. And then there are the socio-economic issues around the reasons why people are settled within these flood risk and areas that are at risk of landslides.
Dr. Sooliman, one of the things that also becomes a concern in situations like these is not only about the people that do not want to move above ground, but at the same time, there's also people that really underestimate the power of water when they just see water on the road and think that they can be able to drive past very quickly. And they then unfortunately become caught up in those situations. Are motorists staying at home and avoiding some of these flooded areas?
That's a big problem, Mongiwe. People don't underestimate the power of water, as you mentioned. It takes only a couple of inches of water to flood a whole car and move a car away and wash it away. And that has been happening quite often. The other problem was, besides the water itself, we don't know what is under the water. A lot of our roads are very badly damaged. They're not maintained. You have huge craters there, potholes. The road is sunken into the ground. It's gone weak, especially now since the previous flood. And people don't know what to expect. Actually, if you see, in the last month, 2 to 3 weeks after the floods of 11th of April, you see the destruction in a much bigger way now than what you saw it in the first few days. And it has caused havoc on the roads and on the side of the roads. So when the messages have been going out all the time, please stay away from the roads. Don't go out if not necessary. But I mean, people still are on the roads, but sometimes, unfortunately, they're already out and the rain comes afterwards. And the rain volume rises very rapidly and rises quite high, significantly. Like for that same example, in Sandsville in Tongaat, where the water raised 8 meters in 45 minutes, and that's a problem. So in these areas, drivers see the water, they think it's safe, they don't understand the power of water. It's notoriously deceptive. It seems like it's slow moving, it's nothing's dangerous, and it washes you away. And right now, in this storm that we're having, it's mostly water on the roads. And the best way to prevent damage or life-threatening situation is to stay off the road.
Prof, one of the things that we saw was that intergovernmental panel on climate change report talking about how, the precise contribution of climate change is very difficult to quantify. But I wonder, as we are continuing to see the impact of such adverse weather conditions, we clearly can see now that these are becoming part and parcel of, the country. How quickly can, government then be able to move in terms of putting resources to be able to respond to issues of climate change as speedily as possible? And what do those resources look like?
Okay, I think government is basically a slow-moving machine by the nature of how decisions are taken, and a lot of policies that sort of strangle the ability to move and implement. But what needs to be done, which the president has acknowledged, is to increase the level of investment in climate change adaptation. So that needs to increase astronomically. We welcome the recent announcement by Minister Barbara Creecy that they are, giving SOARs 100 million to update their early warning infrastructure. But that's just a drop in the ocean. There's need for more investment. There is need for capacity development within local municipalities in the disaster management sectors. There's also need for mainstreaming climate change into a lot of municipal processes. Maintenance of infrastructure, for example, can save a lot in terms of mitigation. Construction of climate resilient infrastructure, proper design of infrastructure is needed. And, capacitating people at the lower level within communities, community-based early warning systems, like what we saw in the Palmiet, in the first floods on the 11th of April. So there's need to invest in those sort of things from the community coming up, as well as investing in the institutions that have a mandate to be providing us with warnings and securing our infrastructure.
But let's hope then that those calls and those suggestions that you've just made now, Prof, are really heeded, because it does look like, as you say, that this adverse condition, in fact, weather condition, is something that can no longer be ignored. Let me thank you both for your time this afternoon.